Hello, I'm here today with Christoph Paul. He is the owner and managing or publishing editor, publisher of Clash Books, an alum of Wilkes University. And Christoph is an author, a humor author. His Clash Books has published already over 60 books, and they've been on Oprah and NPR and Poets and Writers and Rolling Stone and Publishers Weekly and many others. They've been translated already into Spanish, French, and Italian. And he's edited books in every genre for over a decade and has won awards as a writer and as a publisher. Welcome, Christoph.
Hey, thanks for having me, Phil. It's good to see you, and thanks for be back with the Wilkes, the
Yes.
Wilkes love.
Well, Christoph is also a distinguished alum of Wilkes University Creative Writing Program. So, Christoph, tell me, Flash Books, what are you guys up to?
Right now we're I want to say in year 7, at this point, and I have to say we literally just got a New York Times review, so we need to add that to the bio. So we've kind of have we almost act like 3 different presses. We have one is a horror. We really love what we call literary horror. We do nonfiction as well. We've been kind of focused on pop culture, and then literary fiction, kind of darker literary fiction, and we'll do the occasional poetry book. We just have to fall in love with it. So with poetry, it's really about the love of it. So we'll do like a poetry title or 2 a year. Those are kind of our big 4, so to speak. We recently got distribution the past year with Consortium, fellow Etruscan Press as well, part of Consortium, and yeah, we're very busy, very tired, but very excited just to be where we're at. It's been a long time in the making, but we are kind of where we wanted to be when we first started this.
Christoph, tell me some of the challenges that you faced. And of course, before Clash Books, you were also editing and working in other venues. What are some of the biggest challenges that you find in taking a manuscript and then bringing it all the way through the process of getting into people's hands?
Well, I mean, yeah, I learned a little bit after after my MA with Wilkes that I was actually pretty good at editing. I had a girlfriend at the time, and I was like, hey, let me fix this up, and I'm like, hey, I like this, and then I started freelancing, and so I actually love editing. The skills I had to learn as we got more serious in the publishing was more of the business side of it. But yes, it's first I kind of wear the editor hat. I'm editing. We have copy editors. Sometimes I have to delegate, assign it to a certain editor. Then it's working with cover artists. Once the editing is done, it's like, okay, now I got to put on the business hat. And then it's, getting galleys out, finding the right people, picking that right cover. We've really used covers as a way to kind of distinguish ourselves. We're lucky to have about 3 artists on staff that we love to work with. And it's just finding, ways to, whether it's reaching media sites. We've been lucky here and there. We've, kind of our thing was just, okay, let's just stand out and do our own thing instead of trying to fit into something. And that was that was hard in the first 5 years, I'd say, but that's kind of benefited in the last couple. So it's just wearing these different hats. I've had to really learn to delegate the last year and a half, with me having to do more business things and less editing. And social media too. We've kind of used that as a tool, to compete, because we don't have the big, for money, and we aren't, a nonprofit, so we're kind of like playing for keeps, and there's side hustles and all that, and it's a lot, and but I love it. I love the publishing world. I even love a lot of the big 4 people. I love the nonprofits. I love the small presses. It's an ecosystem we're just part of, and I'm happy to be part of that ecosystem.
That's a great way of putting it. And in fact, you were talking earlier, we've talked about other presses that you have affinities with and starting up.
Yeah.
When you think about a book, when you think about, or I should say, a manuscript that you're considering, what is it that makes you fall in love with it?
It's so much about falling in love. I think that's the greatest thing, because it's like, I know, I know I'm not going to just read this one time. I'm probably going to read this 3 times, and then I'm going to pick out quotes. And so it's like, am I really wanting to stay with this book for the long haul? It's like getting into a relationship. And I really have to feel that just excitement. I think, I think back of being a kid when I first fell in love with books, and I go to a bookstore, and you're looking, and you're trying to find that special book for that day, and you read that first page, and you're like, ooh, I think this is the one. It's not that different than that. A lot of times I can tell in that first page, I'd say 90% of the time, if this is going to be something special. Even in the first line sometimes, one of our biggest books, Daryl, I could tell in that first page, I knew it was just something really special, and ended up, and I just like, oh, this is too edgy, but I like it, so maybe other people will, and end up being, one of our biggest books. So it's just, I got to feel that special feeling, kind of like when I met my wife, it's like, all right, I know this is something special.
Oh, very cool. Well, you're an author too,
Yeah.
and I'm curious about that relationship. How has publishing impacted your own writing and your way of approaching writing?
I think it's a great question, because I'm in an interesting place right now where it's definitely made me a better writer. There's no doubt in my mind. I just editing, looking at books. I almost like an athlete can see the field, or see, it's kind of like that for me. The trade-off is I have less time to do the writing, and really the selling. I have like 2 books done. It's not that I have not finished anything. It's now, you know, ironically, I created a press that I wanted that I cannot use. It's very much a selfish act. Like, this is the press I would have wanted. Like, I wanted a press that took chances, that had distribution, that, didn't care too much about commerce, but we're going to stay in business. And I can't use that press. So it's, the publishing aspect is really time consuming. I'm trying agents, and it's slow, but the writing itself, I feel very good about where I'm at as a writer, having just done all this work. Reading is really the most important thing, and you read so carefully, it really impacts your own writing for a better, better quality.
It's such a balance, as you're discovering, and I'm curious too. So many authors that in my experience, really don't know very much about publishing, as I certainly did not when I walked in. I tell people I knew about publishing the way a foodie knows about restaurants. I know what I like, but I
Yeah.
didn't know how to make the sausage.
Mm.
And I'm curious, what has surprised you? Going from you did your MFA in creative writing, you've published books, and then you entered this field. What surprised you about the publishing industry as a writer?
I think, I saw that it's a very risk adverse industry, and I like risks when it comes to art. I don't like risks in other lives. I like to wear my seatbelt. I don't want to go skydiving, but when it comes to art, I like stuff that, could be hated by one person and loved by another. And I saw there was a need, having worked, with an agent that we ended up parting ways. I'm just like, man, it's so by the book. There's just these rules that don't even make sense to me, especially in the big world of publishing. I call corporate publishing, big four. Then you have like the micro press world, which is really just a passion project, and that's cool too. I think I'm a punk guy. I like those presses. I kind of wanted somewhere in the middle, inspired by you, and then Truskin Akashic, $2 radio. I think I've mentioned even when we talked a while ago, just a Rare Bird, presses that kind of doing their own thing. Kaylee Jones, an imprint of I loved what Kaylee was doing. She had a real vision, and kind of just having a space for something. So I see, now that I'm actually trying to find an agent again, it's like, they're like, oh, I love this book. I know I felt like I did a quality book, but I'm like, it's in a certain genre where you have to be so by the book, I might, you know, it might not get representation. And so I see that. I see that the two worlds of that, of how much commerce plays, the bigger the press, the bigger commerce plays a role, you know. And that's, I think, the toughest but a good thing to know when it comes to publishing, that there are other options.
Christoph, you know, one of the things about publishing, and I think your career is an example. I mean, people get in by various means. You know, a lot of it has to do with passion. A lot of it has to do with just not taking no for an answer. But what kind of advice would you give to a new person, a person maybe, you know, finishing a degree, about getting into publishing? You know, how do you do it?
You know, I think it's publishing is very much for me, it's you know, where I do music for fun, and that's like a really selfish act. I want to hear the exact kind of music that I want to hear. And for publishing, it's really been this other way. It's like the antithesis of Ayn Rand. It's like it's about all, it's really unselfishness, because it's like, okay, I joke, it's like being a bridesmaid, you know, especially if you're a writer, and it's like, but I, you know, feel I happen to be a really good bridesmaid, enjoy being a bridesmaid. And it's really about, you know, the idea of giving to other writers. Like, if the idea of you know, literary community, literary citizen, it's kind of like that on steroids in some way. You know, because you're just really, it's a really giving act. So if, you know, and honestly, I think it comes down to being a fan. You know, it's just, at the end of the day, I'm just a super, super fan of the writers I work with. And I want to sing their praises. I want to share the highs and the lows. You're like a coach too. I mean, the lows are rough too. You know, I have a writer, and his book's really out there, as one in the New York Times. And it's like, he's under 30 and he's getting these reviews because he's just really popped off as a young horror writer. So he's, you know, he's getting good ones and bad ones. And, you know, we're riding those highs, riding those lows. So it's, you know, I would say it's, if you're really a fan of books, you know, and writers, then it's a great field to be a part of. And even with the lows, the highs are so much better than the lows. That's what I would say.
Christoph Paul, your highs are very high,
I'm riding them out.
and I'm delighted that you're having this great success with Clash Books and with your own writing. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Phil. I really appreciate it.